Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today guys I'm gonna talk about explain to you the maintenance intervals, what I recommend, what I use, how often I change the fluids on my Tundra, and I guess the main question would be is to answer the question you guys have been asking for it. Maintenance. Well, I guess I will start with those million miles Tundras. Its results of that is how do they reach those miles. People say what's the highway mileage. Well, that's partial truth. Yes, I would 50% is highway mileage and the other 50% is the maintenance. If you look at their oil change intervals, they don't say what fluid they were using, conventional, synthetic, full synthetic, none of that stuff. What they were changing about every 3 weeks or so, maybe plus or minus. That's what they're changing the oil. Transmission fluid, they were changing it, I think, every 100,000 miles, but that's the reason why they were having problems. One said if he would have done it flushes, he would not have to rebuild the transmission. The third gear went out. The other one, the first guy, said his transmission reverse went out at 700. Well, if you change the fluid, you know what I mean, because fluid cannot last more than 50,000 miles without causing severe wear and damage to the transmission. So let me talk to you guys. Well, let me show you and talk, I guess. Let's start with engine oil, what I use and how often I change. I change my fluids once a year. I use 100% synthetic oil. I use factory recommended viscosity 0W20. I don't use full synthetics and don't use conventional oil. There will be a link. If you care, you can check it out. What fluids are used: motor oil, transmission, gear oil. This is what I use. I use 100% synthetic motor oil in my vehicles, all of them. Even this 226,000 Toyota Tundra. That's what I use. I would run up to 15,000 miles on this oil. If you're using full synthetic oil, the thing is, with full synthetics, there is cheap full synthetics and there is a mid grade and there is a expensive full synthetics. Like we'll use Mobil as an example. They have cheap synthetic, full synthetic. They have mid grade, goes to 15k miles, and they have the expensive full synthetic that goes to 20k thousand miles. When it comes to cheap full synthetics, it doesn't matter what brand you use. It's your personal choice. If you want to use, stick to 5,000 miles for best possible protection. Why? Why 5,000 miles if Toyota says 10k is good? Well, here is the thing. Toyota or any other brand, factories, or the place you work, what is the main goal of any companies? Is to sell more products or sell more service. Toyota wants to sell more cars, not less. Toyota wants cars to wear out, because imagine if people drive their cars for 30 years and they don't wear out, Toyota or any other car manufacturers will be bankrupt, will be out of the business pretty much. Goal is to sell more, make money. Well, how do you sell more? Stuff has to break, stuff has to wear out. And if you do maintenance more than what they say, well, you're not going to have the problems with your engine, or your transmission, or your transfer case, or your differential, because you have always fresh fluids. How those guys able to get million miles without trouble-free? Well, changing the fluids. The first Tundra that got million miles, they were able to get actually engine ran better with a million miles on it than was brand new. More torque, more power. Why? Because it was braked in, because he was changing fluids very often. With a 8-9 quarts capacity, and you run it 5,000-6,000 miles, that's a pretty good interval, especially highway. That's why recommendation is, if you're running full synthetics, 5k max, if you're doing off-roading or heavy towing, cut that number smaller. Oil is cheap, versus, but someone might say, well, I just don't have time. Then switch to something that provides you better protection. That's transmission or engine. What about transmission? In the transmission, my recommendation, like I said earlier, transmission is there. What is the transmission? Right there is the transmission. Change your fluids. 50,000, not even 50,000, 30 to 40,000 max using factory fluid. If you go with aftermarket fluids, then you gotta research and do more research in terms of how good and what's the interval you can do. I use synthetic fluid. There will be a link, and I don't want this video to make it sound like I am advertising it, so I don't want to mention brands as much as I possibly. I use synthetic. I tried factory fluid. I done an oil analysis on the factory WS fluid, and the factory fluid cannot last more than 4 years, 3-4 years, and after that it just, you know what I mean, you can still use it, but you're gonna have a lot of wear and sludge inside the transmission. So that's where, you know what I mean, you gotta be careful. If you want to have a trouble-free Tundra, you gotta use either synthetic fluid, ITF, or change it more often. Because why 40,000? Here is the thing. Factory WS fluid is not synthetic. From 90s, when the car manufacturers were recommending changing the transmission fluid every 30,000, what have changed? How did the transmission fluid became better since 90s? Factory. They haven't become better. They have not become better. The performance on the transmission fluids from 90s have not improved or doubled. They improved few things, couple points here and there, but the fluid still is only good up to 30,000 factory fluid. I have done an oil analysis, and I'm going to be doing more, and all that information will be posted on my YouTube channel, so you'll be able, guys, to check it out and compare. If you go with aftermarket fluids, you got to do research or do oil analysis. I'm going to be pushing to 3 to 4 years, about 50,000 miles max, because fluid is cheap. When you look at how much transmission repair cost, just a repair without replacing it and removing it, you know what I mean, just a transmission, brand new or refurbished, it's expensive. It's cheaper to change the fluid using the most expensive you can find and more often than replacing the transmission. Then I guess the next thing would be transfer case. The transfer case, let me show you if you can see or not. Right there is the transfer case. Same thing. I use gear oil, I use synthetic. Same thing, 4 years max, up to 50,000 on synthetic. Factory, 30,000, 40 maybe, depending on how you drive, you know what I mean. If you tow and off-road, then change fluids more often. Rear end, same thing. I use synthetic fluid, change it more often, no more than 50,000. It's fluid is cheap. No, even the most expensive, it's still cheaper than repair. Same thing, front differential, synthetic fluids are used. I don't use factory, but you can use anything you want. It's your car, you know, just do research. If you like particular brand and that's what you've been using and you really don't care for the brand as long as it's cheap, just change it more often. What I use, there will be a link, you can check it out. Everything, there will be one link and you can check everything, all the fluids that I use. I use only synthetic fluids, I use quality products. You know, people say that Toyota is a quality car. Toyota is a quality car. Well, there is a quality fluids too, if you believe it or not, but it's there, you know. I have another person, actually a good friend of mine, who always says, oil is an oil. So what? Why should I be using more expensive if I can get cheap? Well, just recently he sends me a picture of his bill, where he took it to the shop and he complains it's too expensive, to the oil change shops, not dealer. And then when he comes back, or actually he sends me the picture of the receipt and he shows it me, and I'm like, the first thing I noticed it, the shop used the wrong viscosity and the wrong oil for his diesel van. Yes. And I told him immediately, I'm like, they use the wrong oil and the wrong viscosity. So he goes back to them and tells them, and they put a different oil. Now they use, again, wrong viscosity and wrong oil. So he's like, oh, what, you know, it's an oil. I'm like, well, it's an oil. You know, olive oil it's the cheapest oil you can get per gallon. Might as well use that. He laughed at me, but now he's paying the price for it. You know how? 2 trips to the shop, and the second trip, they don't want to see him again there. They keep telling him this is the right oil. And then I told him, read your owner's manual. He looked at the owner's manual and he asked me what wrong could go if I use the wrong oil. I'm like, your emission system is gonna be, you're gonna have problems. Now he's running around trying to get the shop to replace the oil for free because they put the wrong oil. How many people out there like him that don't even know, don't check, run their vehicle with incorrect oil, incorrect viscosities, and then end up with the problems a lot. Because many shops don't even carry the oil that you need. They look at it, oh, it's 5W40, that's good enough for every brand. No, it's not. One of the things, that I wanna, say in this video is, if you're buying a diesel vehicle from a dealer that has only gasoline vehicles, there is a good chance he might use incorrect oil. Because how do you know? If they don't have the oil and they're just too lazy to send a parts guy to get 4 gallons of diesel oil, they might use the oil for the gasoline engine. It's just one of the things that possibly can go. And I guess the other thing I want to mention is, your coolant. Change your coolant, depends how much you drive. If you normal driving about 10 years, 9 years, you don't want to push it. That's with aluminum block. If you have cast iron block on your older Tundra, change more often. Coolant is cheaper. You know what I mean? If you live in a hot climate weather, don't even push it 8 years. Cut it down to maybe 7 years. It's cheap. The fluid is cheap. No matter what brand you use, it's still cheaper than having a clogged up radiator, clogged up block, overheating issue, and so on. Brake fluid. That's something you gotta keep in mind to change that. How often? That's something I haven't really verified yet. It's in my to-do list, how often to change the brake fluid. Quite honestly, never had issues with the brake fluid going bad. Well, going bad, I mean like issues with the calipers or brake cylinder because the fluid was too old. But that should be looked at it too and changed too, your fluid. And there is like those maintenance items, you know what I mean, brake pads, wiper blades, wheel bearings, U-joints, bushings, ball joints, stuff like that wears out. Those are wear items and maintenance items that would have to be addressed. Ball bearings, wheel bearings, ball joints, bushings, 200, maybe 300, depends how you drive, what kind of wheels you have. If you have factory wheels, you're gonna get more life out of it. If you drive highway, if you do off-road, well, when you do off-road, your lifespan of components will be cut in half, maybe even less, because it's a lot of stress and wear on those components. Another thing that I want to mention is filters. Change your air filter. Check your filter once a year, maybe less if you're doing driving on dusty dirt roads. Change your air filter more often. Check it more often, every 6 months to a year. If you don't drive, check your filter once a year. If it's dirty, replace it. If it's good, leave it for a couple years. I just replaced on my Tundra, not Sequoia filter, air filter. It was dirty, but it was not clogged up, so it was about time, about 2 years I put in. How many miles? Probably about 16,000 I put in. But the truck or the SUV was driven highway miles, never off-road. People who take the off-road would have to change it more often. It gets dirty more often. What else that I want to talk about? And I guess forgot to mention is why I don't follow. I guess that's what I said. For the engine oil, I use 100% synthetic. I go up to 15,000. My recommendation is, if you want ultimate protection, use 100% synthetic oils. Another thing that's worth doing it once in a while, using oil analysis, because on your engine, transmission, oil analysis is not that expensive. Let's say your oil cooler in the engine fails, starts leaking slowly. You might not see that in the oil, notice it, or maybe some other issues you might have in your oil, on your engine. That's where oil analysis can pick it up, and you can do the preventive maintenance diagnostics, basically say, oh, there's something going on. Why my oil is how those numbers or has that? Something to look into. Same thing for the transmission. Why is it like this? Maybe the fluid needs to be changed sooner than I'm thinking. So that's why it's good to do on oil analysis. Once a year, not once a year, I mean once in a while, every maybe 2, 3 years, 4 years. maybe sooner. It depends. Like I said, fluids are cheap versus repairs and replacements. Not even talking about not be able to drive to work, or if you're a business owner, not be able to make money because your vehicle is down. So there you go. If I missed something, just drop me a comment. I will address it either in the comment section or make another video. So that's my this is basically my intervals: front, rear, and transfer case. 3-4 years, 50,000 max. Transmission, 50,000 max on aftermarket fluids that I'm doing. Factory fluids, transfer case, front differential and rear, 40,000, 30 to 40,000. I don't want to push it more. Same again, 3 to 4 years. Why did I say 3 to 4 years? Transmission, transfer case, years old? Because in reality, no one is going to give you a warranty and say or guarantee the fluid quality after 3 or 4 years. No one, absolutely. And they will say if it's in a bottle, sit in a shelf in a perfect environment, about 3 to 4 years max they will give. Well, if it's sitting in a bottle, you think it's going to be good in a vehicle when it's exposed to heat, stress, and moisture? No, of course not. The life is even shorter. So that's what it is, and I think I covered everything. If not, all the fluids, power steering. Yeah, same thing with the power steering. Changing power steering on Toyota, if you have one, especially on Tundras, it's piece of cake. You extract. I have video maintenance for Toyota's Tundra for everything except power. No, not power steering. For brake fluid. For everything else, I have it. And actually for the coolant, yes, that's right. I haven't changed the coolant. It's coming up probably this winter time. I'm going to be replacing the coolant. We'll see. I'll send it sample to the lab and see how it goes. Maybe next year. So that's pretty much it. Yeah. And I guess I want to mention one more thing. Frame undercoating. Not sure if you can see or not, but this is 2012. It's in a rust bucket. Well, it's not rust bucket. It's in a rust area where I live. The frame is pretty clean. If you spray it very often, as you can see, I spray with an H oil, but there's many other products. You know what I mean. Use what works for you. My recommendation: either MP by M-Soil or an H oil. Both are excellent products and work extremely well. So as you can see, anywhere I have an H oil, and actually everything that's wet that you see with an H oil, it's since last year in the fall, like October or November when I sprayed, and it's still good. And I don't wash my cars. I don't spray my cars underneath. And I have a video on that subject too. So if you're interested, let me know. I'll post the link. I'll give you the link. So thank you and have an awesome day.